The world of lost media tends to be strange and unusual. Sometimes it is the media that's incredibly odd, but others it's the mystery or story behind them. The searches and histories can be the most compelling part of it all. Today we're going to be covering 8 pieces of lost media with bizarre backstories. We will get right into it after I share some other bizarre things that can happen while you're online searching for lost media if you aren't using NordVPN, which is the sponsor of this video. If you don't have a VPN or not Nord, you can get an exclusive risk-free deal using my URL, nordvpn.com/Kylie. I'll link it in the description. It's 2 years with 4 months free and provides a 30-day money-back guarantee if you aren't satisfied with your experience. I'm sure 99% of you have heard the definition of a VPN spiel, but if you don't know exactly what they do, they encrypt your data and IP address to keep you safe from online threats like public Wi-Fi attacks and malware. Then there's the fun side where you can stay at home virtually while traveling, allowing you to sign into your Hulu account from anywhere. A VPN is the smart idea for anyone who is regularly using the internet, and especially if you are searching every corner of it for lost media. You can access media that is only available in other countries with the click of a button, which is extremely useful in many cases. It's very user-friendly, and if this sounds good to you so far, use that link. There's tons of perks for every internet user and reasons as to why Nord is more beneficial compared to others. One of their features, MeshNet, acts as a LAN and lets you safely access other devices no matter the location. This is especially great for file sharing and multiplayer gaming. Their threat protection not only automatically recognizes malicious links, but will block any dangerous download before they're able to harm your device. And they have a dark web monitor that alerts you if any of your passwords appear on any sketchy websites, which is a preemptive measure to ensure you never get hacked. Like I said, it's completely risk-free, so be sure to check out my link in the description, nordvpn.com/Kylie, to get your exclusive deal of 2 years with 4 months free and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Now we'll get right into it. I'm sure many of you grew up watching Nickelodeon, and since you're watching this video, are probably acquainted with some of its lost history. The piece of said history we're going to be talking about is an unnerving lost episode of one of their game shows, Double Dare. Premiering in 1986 as Nick's first ever game show, the premise was simple. 2 teams compete to win prizes by completing physical challenges like catching meatballs as a human bowl of spaghetti and answering trivia questions. This series holds a convoluted history to say the least. The Australian adaptation that ran from 1989 to 1992 is just about entirely lost. The show was unsuccessfully rebooted twice, once in 2000, then nearly 2 decades later in 2018. It's also had a few different names like Super Sloppy Double Dare and Family Double Dare. The majority of lost episodes are mundane, but one has a more unusual story. So the contestants would have to sign waivers prior to being allowed on the show, as certain health conditions would make them exempt due to the physical stunts they'd perform. However, the host, Mark Summers, said during a 2014 Comic-Con that children and their parents would frequently lie in order to bypass these restrictions. He shared an incident that has stuck with him forever and is the story of the lost episode we're discussing. They were filming an obstacle course segment as they typically would when the child contestant fell. These kinds of things are honestly expected. I mean, they strap helmets onto the contestants in case of such occurrences. The average healthy kid has a good amount of endurance to falls, at least on the smaller side. But this kid, and more importantly his parents, were an example of the aforementioned liars. As he made impact after falling, his arm broke, to an extent so severe that Mark says a part of his bone literally snapped out of his skin, and that the sight was so gruesome to Mark that he had to leave set to avoid vomiting. This is when they found out the child had brittle bone disease and a history of what Mark remembers as 19 arm breaks prior to filming. Brittle bone disease, or osteogenesis imperfecta, is a genetic disease where bones fracture extremely easily. It's truthfully really alarming that the kid's parents let him go on the show, but Mark manages to recount the story in a somewhat lighthearted manner, and the child was ultimately okay. But the episode never aired and will presumably be lost to time. This is one that is better off lost because I'm sure it's a very tragic recording. Mark clarifies they never redid that specific obstacle course ever again. Given the popularity of the mysterious song and people seeing how easy it can be to fabricate a story that will pique interest, like Saki Sanobashi or Polybius, there has unfortunately been a rise in hoaxes within the lost media community. This next piece of media itself is real and of the 80s era. People legitimately could not identify it, and a search entailed to find it. But the story behind the song that a Reddit user invented was falsified, and the tale overall is pretty elaborate. User So Do I Song turned to r/lostwave inquiring about a mysterious cassette. r/lostwave is a subreddit where users share unidentified or obscure music. OP said it belonged to their grandfather, who believed it was recorded in Germany. Same country the mysterious song was recorded in. You can kinda get a sense that this person is trying to cook something up, you know? It's worth mentioning all they had was a 53-second clip of the cassette that they recorded on their phone from years ago, not the cassette itself. They were going to go looking for the cassette at their grandparents' house though, of course. But the cassette contained a very catchy song that to some even sounded like the mysterious song vocalist. You can take a listen here. Users in the thread were immediately invested. They began giving suggestions for possible musicians and searching for the culprit behind the tune. When it wasn't found quickly with typical efforts, it soon joined the other searches that inhabited the subreddit. Thankfully, about a month and a half later, someone came across an upload of the song on YouTube with the title DCO So Do I that was uploaded in 2019. The description read, "Written and produced in 1985 by Lassen and Schwartz." Awesome, mystery solved and another piece of lost media identified. But this is when people began noticing some discrepancies in OP's story. So Do I was found, the song was completely real and from 1985. The channel that uploaded the song contains other DCO music and is definitely the original artist, who was confused as to why a bunch of people flooded into his comments. The first thing was that another user in the Lost Wave subreddit seemed a bit suspicious, and others started speculating they were So Do I Song's other account. The only posts on their profile are about the cassette and were adamant in its possible connection to the mysterious song. Notably, when it was identified, made a post saying, "There were several people in the comments under the previous post who said that they have face blindness, which makes their hearing more sensitive. According to them, the voice of the singer in So Do I is really similar to the voice in TMS, and they have no doubt that it is the same person." Which users in the thread pointed out that statement was pretty amusing and not really how that works. When the musician himself confirmed he wasn't the artist of the mysterious song, people then also noticed how OP's alleged cassette recording had identical noise reduction artifacts as the 2019 YouTube upload. This would indicate OP recorded the YouTube video with his phone and created this grandpa cassette backstory. The final nail in the coffin was after everyone started realizing the story was almost definitely a hoax. User So Do I Song magically appeared with the cassette. The initial plan was to film the cassette playing So Do I, but OP's cassette player was broken. However, they were nice enough to provide an image of the cassette where it literally says the title and artist's names. So homie either made this completely up and couldn't even think of a better thing to write on the cassette, or the cassette was something their grandfather did record, but obviously would have known the band all along. Whether this was for attention or to feel like they were somehow helping the mysterious song search, or purely a troll, I'm unsure of. It's one convoluted story, but on the bright side, all these funky searches lead to cool, obscure music getting more recognition. If I told you that this channel, Prism55, that posted B-movie and JoJo Siwa memes was now lost media, I'm assuming you wouldn't care and be like, why the hell is that in the video? Well, Prism55 belonged to a sick individual who would later commit the 2022 Bratislava hate crime tragedy. Prism55 joined YouTube in 2014 and began posting in 2015. He started with Minecraft content, then later moved on to the meme videos in 2016. They were in the fashion of the very common late 2010s trend of, for example, one of his most popular videos, Jake Paul's "It's everyday bro, but every time it's cringy, it gets faster." He had abandoned the Minecraft content entirely and would periodically post meme videos until the end of 2018. There are other documentations of his online history, like this Wix site that he created, a DeviantArt account, and even a second vlog channel that I was unable to find any further info on. It's incredibly jarring and dark to go through all of the accounts he had amongst the internet, knowing what he'd go on to do only some years later. His online presence was seemingly harmless until 2021, when he created a Twitter account and began spewing alt-right, homophobic, anti-Semitic, and overall extremely disconcerting posts. I'm sure you get the gist. Technically, this Twitter account and the aforementioned vlog channel are considered lost media as well, since the account was terminated and the videos have been deleted. That being said, this is the one other case in this video that probably deserves to be lost, since the tweets that are archived are, simply put, abhorrent, and I can't imagine the others are any different. Going through them, it's rather clear this was a long, premeditated attack. On October 11th, 2022, he tweeted, "I have made my decision. It will be done." It was October 12th when he went to Teplaren, a well-known gay bar in Bratislava, and shot 3 people at the establishment. One of the victims, who was an employee, thankfully survived her injuries, but sadly, the 2 others passed away. I hope Jure Van Kulik and Mattis Horvath rest in peace, and my heart goes out to their families. Jure Van Kulik seemed to have been very passionate about the world of fashion, and I believed worked for H&M. Mattis Horvath appears to have had less of an online presence, but I found a SoundCloud account that was pretty active, and he posted about Guild Wars 2 before, so I'd assume he had a love for music and video games. Their names deserve to be said way more than Prism Guy, who also posted some dumb manifesto bullshit before he committed the attack. After the incident, he went home and got in a fight with his parents, who, note, did not do anything about the fact they just learned their son had committed murder besides argue with him. Then he sewer slided himself. Shortly after, officials put all the pieces together on the motive and all of his social media accounts. His parents are also reportedly under investigation for failure to report their son to the police. There is an archive of every title of the videos he posted to his channel, but the actual videos aren't archived anywhere as far as I could tell, and as far as public access goes, are presumably lost to time. Probably the darkest thing I have ever talked about on this channel, and is all around such a devastating story. Media collectors and preservationists are the holy saviors of the lost media community that are often underappreciated. So we're going to be giving a specific collector some recognition. In October of 1989, a teenager named Mark Davis began working at a Chicago suburb Kmart. Every month, corporate would send the location a cassette full of background music and advertisements that were to be played over the speakers during said month. A few years later, in 1992, they began issuing them weekly. The ones during the early 90s contained mostly mainstream songs, instead of the instrumental, elevator-esque music that was on the cassettes prior, but still had advertisements unique to whatever week it was. In 1993, Kmart began using satellite programming for background music, and the dispersing of the cassette tapes came to a halt. Now, the staff was supposed to trash these tapes after the month or week had passed. But Mark Davis here had a love for stereo systems and a natural knack as a collector. As he was unsuspectingly working the service desk, he decided to stuff a cassette into his apron and stole it to take home. This would then become a monthly, later weekly, tradition for Mark. In 1999, he stopped working at Kmart, but had amassed a total of 56 tapes. He'd then keep them for over 2 decades until 2013, when he decided to share his story and digitize them on archive.org, with the title, "Attention Kmart Shoppers." The tale of the Kmart cassette collector went viral, and shortly thereafter he uploaded a YouTube video explaining the history of his Kmart days. His reasoning behind deciding to collect them was because he figured someday they'd be interesting. The cassettes were created by the corporation Tapeathon. He also says how the music on the earlier tapes weren't readily available elsewhere, and were essentially stock music exclusive to Blue Chin era Kmart. For their 30th anniversary in 1992, Kmart threw an extravagant event that Mark said even contained clowns, and for this they had a special tape created that was only ever used on that day. Since Kmart was founded in 1962, it's roughly 100 minutes of 60s hits and fun facts. This was another that they were supposed to just toss after the day of the anniversary, but thankfully, like the others, Mark saved it, and he considers it the most interesting tape in his collection. Even though he thinks most of the instrumental music to be tacky, I honestly find a lot of it very soothing and I enjoy it. Mark's peculiar yet outstanding collection not only preserved this catchy Kmart music that would have been completely unknown lost media, but has also been a huge service for the vaporwave community and is essentially a vaporwave artist's dream. It's awesome that Mark preserved all of these tapes, and it's unreal to think how much lost media is out there that we don't even know about. There is only one show in the history of the United States that has ever been ripped off the air and canceled during its first broadcast, and that is 1969's Turn On. It is a surreal sketch comedy wildly ahead of its time, so much so that it offended the average 1969 brain to the point where it was pulled off while airing the pilot and then would be completely lost for many decades to come. It was considered an infamous piece of lost media and was known as one of television's biggest flops. It was scheduled to premiere on February 5th, 1969. The premise was that it was the first computerized show, in the fact that the scripting was generated by a computer, not a human writer. It wasn't literally computerized, but that was the idea behind the strangeness and hilarity of the skits. The topics ranged from random visuals to political and social commentary in the form of jokes. Nothing new today, but back then it was incredibly progressive, or at least the subjects they touched on. The offbeat, fast-moving nature of the sketch comedy reportedly left viewers physically disturbed, and a channel in Ohio didn't return to it after the very first commercial break 10 minutes in. For the rest of the time slot dedicated to Turn On, they turned to their emergency procedure of playing a black screen with organ music. Channel switchboards were lighting up with calls protesting the series, and this is when they decided to cancel it. Then, Turn On was to never be seen again. I'll play some quick clips of this alleged physically disturbing show.
We will not be bringing you our usual weather report for Hong Kong, as the weatherman is down with the Sioux City flu. I got rhythm, I got rhythm. Ah.
These eyes are dull, lifeless, unadorned. But see what happens with an easy application of eye glory. What a difference.
Mom always did like you best.
Why don't you just get yourself a job?
I gotta stay loose, baby. I can't be pinned down to a job.
Can't you accept you're just a member of the working class?
I don't consider myself working class.
You don't consider yourself working class? What do you consider yourself?
I consider myself middle class.
So if you're the middle class, who's the working class?
The unemployed.
As you can see, it probably would have had a lot more success if it were made today. They also rejected the use of laugh tracks and in place would use a synth that was meant to represent the computer laughing. 54 years would go by, and the only proof we had of this near-fabled piece of lost media was less than a minute of a few different clips that were shown on an 80s ABC news report. The show had a 29-minute runtime, just to give you an idea as to how much left was lost. Additionally, there was a second episode that had never seen the light of day, until those 54 years passed. It was June 17th, 2023, when YouTube user PhilRock mystifyingly uploaded the full 2 episodes to his channel. The specifics of how he obtained them aren't fully disclosed and possibly a bit shady. Someone on r/lost media claimed to be his friend and said, "If you know, you know." The PhilRock episodes were soon taken down by the creator's legal team, but countless people had already downloaded and archived the episodes and were quickly re-uploaded by others. PhilRock commented on a re-upload, given that the original show lacks a copyright notice and that this upload hasn't been taken down, they were probably bluffing. Overall, I'm glad that this weird-ass show is able to reach more people now. Hopefully, it can be remembered not just as a historic television flop, but instead as an innovative piece of media from the 60s that really was not offensive at all and definitely didn't deserve the immense backlash. But I suppose it wasn't of its time, so what can you expect? Also, lost media stays turning up on YouTube. Sometimes the world has a way of naturally connecting things in curious ways. This next piece of lost media ties into 2 notorious searches. The mysterious song once again, and Socieda's X-tape, so I'd consider it quite the story. You probably don't need me to explain the former, we already talked about it, but Socieda's X-tape, while an accepted lost media search, isn't as known, so I'll summarize. In June of 2019, Boards of Canada broadcasted a mixtape on NTS radio. This wasn't a mixtape of their own music, but songs that inspired them throughout the years and is what NTS described as a 2-hour selection of mind-melting offbeat psychedelia. It's a fascinating listen, but that's besides the point. This broadcast did not have an available track list, so listeners were quick to want to identify the music featured in the mixtape. Some were recognized quickly, but others required entire searches in order to find them, and even now there are a few that are still unknown. Namely, track 48 was unknown for a couple of months, and it would eventually lead to one of the first prominent leads in the TMS search. A couple of weeks after Wang uploaded his first video on TMS, user Sakone pointed out how the unidentified Socieda's song's vocalist sounded strikingly similar. Since the band of that song was nowhere to be found, this naturally made them wonder if they could be the artist behind both musical pieces. I mean, it'd be a cool story and would be the answer to the, at the time, 12-year-long mystery. It'd honestly be groundbreaking for the lost media community. This Socieda's lead was talked about in Wang's update video, giving more attention to the tidbit. On August 7th, someone heard the song The Cinema Clock by the Sinking Ships, and thought the voices and music style combined were too alike to not be the same band in track 48. After going through the Sinking Ships discography, in a positive turn of events, they were correct. On a YouTube video titled The Sinking Ships Strangers.wmv, they were pleasantly delighted to hear the same song as track 48. So another piece of Societa's X-Tapes puzzle was solved. And this could mean maybe the entirety of the Mysterious Song saga was about to be as well. So someone reached out to Terry Wellborn, the vocalist of The Sinking Ships, inquiring to see if there was any chance he could be our guy. Terry responded with confirmation he was the singer for Strangers and that he was aware of their song being used in Societas. He then added that TMS sounded a lot like The Sinking Ships, but delivered the unfortunate news that they had nothing to do with it, and the search was back to square one. I'm glad that it at least solved part of another mystery and gave spotlight to some obscure 80s music. To this day, I think it's one of the most compelling leads for the Mysterious Song search. I hope sometime soon another lead comes along that is just as, if not more, compelling to put that long-ass mystery to rest once and for all. One of the most widely known pieces of intentionally fake lost media is Candle Cove, the creepypasta surrounding a lost children's show. Well, there is an allegedly real-life Candle Cove-esque film from the 70s or 80s that left children deeply disturbed, and after said children grew up, have sought out to find it ever since. It's relatively well known in Russia, but is a pretty obscure mystery in English-speaking countries. There are Russian forums filled to the brim of people trying to find this disturbing childhood memory with no success in finding the elusive piece of media. It was an adaptation of the fairy tale Zwerg Nase or Dwarf Nose, which was written by Wilhelm Hoff in 1826. In the story, a young boy named Jacob helps his mother with her produce stand by assisting customers. One day, an old woman comes along that Jacob thinks is ugly due to her shabby attire and long nose. She prods around at the cabbages with her skinny fingers and talks a bunch of shit on the cabbages, even referring to them as wretched. Jacob isn't having it with the woman dissing their cabbages, so he tells her if she keeps sniffing them with her long nose, no one will want them anymore. Her rebuttal is, "My lad, my nose seems to please you. You shall have one like it, but longer still." Despite calling the cabbages and cauliflowers bad, she makes a purchase and asks if Jacob can help her carry them home. When he gets her to her house, he's met with clothed guinea pigs that walk on their hind legs. Then it's revealed she doesn't have cauliflower in her bag, but a man's head. For some reason, he doesn't leave, and she cooks soup for the boy with the help of guinea pigs and squirrels who wear Turkish trousers and green velvet caps. After eating the soup, he passes out on the couch and lives 7 entire years as a squirrel chef in his dreams. After awakening, he goes home and his mother greets him with, "Go away, you horrid dwarf." A bomb is then dropped when Jacob realizes he has been missing for 7 years and the dream was real. He also has a roughly 8-inch long nose now. When he tries to explain to his parents that he was a squirrel for 7 years, they beat him. Now homeless, he finds a job as a cook and ends up becoming basically a world-class chef, but is given the name of Longnose. In the end, he is turned back to Jacob and his parents accept him. But then there is an herb war due to Jacob's departure as Longnose that is ultimately ended by baking the perfect pasty and went down in history as the pasty piece. Very odd and wild ride of a fairy tale, and sometime in the late 70s or early mid-80s was adapted as a children's film that nobody has been able to find, despite all the people that have recalled and searched for it. So you can imagine if the adaptation was faithful, it could be unnerving to kids. But it seems it was made in an even gloomier, more unsettling essence than the story. An excerpt from someone who recalls watching it reads, "The atmosphere is gothic, unusually heartfelt, with sinking in the inner world of the main character, presence of fog or haze, hopelessness and strain, some other feeling that everything happens in a dream, and the desire to move quickly is impossible. Main hero moved awkwardly like slow-mo as if pressed to the ground. One of the bright, memorable scenes, human heads in the witch's basket, were real and bloody with open mouths. The camera showed heads at close range. What sticks out to me when reading people's descriptions is how all of the movements in the movie happened slowly, like how when in a nightmare you're unable to run. Other aspects seem to be darker than the original story, with contrasts like they made the old woman's house raggedy and dim, but in the fairy tale her house was large and beautifully described by Jacob. Recollections also tend to consist of Jacob's walk home from the woman's house to be unnecessarily long and again slow, to the point where people have referred to it as irrational because of how drawn out it was. The heads in a basket is also consistent amongst memories and is usually what petrified kids the most. And a lot remember the title as something along the lines of The Legend of Poor Jacob. People have searched Soviet TV guides and contacted people who may have been involved with the film, but to no avail. 3 years ago, a user turned to r/lost media sharing the case, but it received little attention. While trying to find other posts, I ran into this one, and the only comment was, "Did it star Sinbad?" So it wasn't taken seriously. It is definitely worth mentioning that as of today, there is no legitimate proof of its existence, but it also isn't known within the lost media community. So the extent of the search has never really left the group of people in Russia searching for it. Considering every known film adaptation has been disproven as not what they remember, and such a vast amount of people do recall it, all sharing specific details, I'm keen on believing it is real and out there, or at least something similar. I don't think it's a Sinbad situation, and I wanted to bring attention to it because maybe it will help the search and result in letting these people feast their eyes onto their childhood drama. Hopefully one day it is found, or maybe just proof of its existence for a glimmer of optimism. There's an endless sea of obscure music that has never seen the light of day, so the discovery of an enigmatic album with an intriguing backstory can definitely pique the interest of the internet. This is the story of Panchiko DEATHMETAL. It was July 21st, 2016, when a 4chan user turned to the music board with a photo of an album that they had found impossible to get any info on. The cover was art from the manga Mint Nobukura, and it read Panchiko DEATHMETAL. OP picked it up at a local charity shop and was expecting noise pop vaporwave wankery, but was instead met with hella lo-fi shoegaze. The copy that the 4chan user found was heavily distorted, but I will play a clip of the contents of that version of the album. They assured it wasn't some viral marketing bullshit, but were genuinely just curious if anyone could shed light on the source and history of the album. However, a lot of people weren't convinced. I mean, a distorted lo-fi CD with an anime cover and a compelling found at a charity shop, but there's no shred of evidence of the band's existence anywhere can seem far-fetched. But others were interested and determined in getting an answer to the newfound mystery. This would then set forth a 4-year-long journey of hunting down the origins of Panchiko. The album hadn't quite left the 4chan circle until 2017, when the full rip of the album was posted to YouTube by the channel Sticky, who now goes by the name Dismiss Yourself. This garnered more attention to the search, but identity of the band members remained unknown. We did have their first names, but with no surnames, it was still a needle in a haystack when it came to tracking any of them down. Then, in 2019, a person who went by the name of Zod joined the search, and he was more insistent and determined than anyone prior to getting an answer. People continuously searched for leads, but it was in early 2020 when Zod here took notice to a detail that seemingly no one had paid any mind to. the barcode on the CD. Now, we knew the 4chan user had found it at an Oxfam in the UK, but there are about 600 Oxfam locations there. So up until then, knowing the name of the store was of no help. But after Zod paid attention to this barcode, he realized it may hold the key to this puzzling mystery. Simply Googling the last 4 digits with the word Oxfam would lead him to their Sherwood, Nottingham location, which is a district with a population of merely 15,000. Not absurdly small, but small enough to make that first name track down exponentially easier. The lead singer's name was listed as Owain, and members of the Panchiko Discord decided to go with that one first. It wasn't long until a Facebook profile belonging to an English musician named Owain was found. Constructing a message with hopes this would put the mystery to rest, they went with, "Hello, you'll probably never read this, but are you the lead singer of Panchiko?" And to their pleasant surprise, Owain responded with, "Yeah." It was found out that the EP was from 2000, and none of the band members had the slightest clue that Panchiko death metal had accumulated a cult following online. However, they were more than happy to provide a non-deteriorated copy of the album. And even though the album's name was anything but the such, the uncertainty and mystery of Panchiko came to a close. But it didn't end there. Not only did the band release a remastered copy, they decided to reunite entirely and gave Panchiko a second go over 20 years later. They went on to create and release new music, merch, and the search for death metal garnered a large enough following that they're currently on tour. Very happy ending, but people still speculate if this was a publicity stunt for a planned reunion, since some think the story is like too good to be true. But sometimes life really just unfolds that way. It'd be odd to put people on a wild goose chase for 4 years. Disc rot cannot be easily replicated, and there is footage of them as a band in the late 90s. So despite the skepticality of some, I'm inclined to believe Panchiko truly was a naturally occurring, incredibly bizarre lost media case. I think the searches and perplexity of lost media are a big component of why people love it so much, or at least it's a huge part for me. I hope you enjoyed this video and that the peculiar stories of the cases we talked about can be appreciated. Thank you.